Well, hello, everybody. Happy New Year. It is 2024, and the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast is officially back for a year of it. And we are excited to be back with you. Appreciate all of you listening to our podcast. We have taken a little hiatus off, but we are back in full force, and we have so many exciting things to talk to you about. So glad that you've chosen to join us today. I'm going to jump right into it today. I am solo. But we have got a ton of great guests coming up. Next week, we're going to have Joey Nania from the Bassmaster Opens and Classic Qualifier. And I tell you, we have already filmed that podcast, and he blew it out of the water. You do not want to miss Joey Nania next week on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. Happy New Year to everybody. I want to thank everyone who participated and supported the Bass Chaplain Nitro Boat Giveaway. In case you missed the recap of why we do a boat giveaway, the boat giveaway enables us to really do what we do. It enables me to do things that we would never get to do through the support, and every dollar that is taken in from the Bass Chaplain Nitro Boat Giveaway is spent on ministry. And we try to reach sportsmen and outdoorsmen with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we want to thank you so very much. I think that this year we sold 846 tickets, and that enables to keep me going on the Bassmaster Trail, preaching in places that I would never ever get to preach because they couldn't afford to bring me in, and just doing the day-to-day ministry things like this podcast that we get to do. And we are so very thankful for your support. And it was just a great time, and so many of you have reached out to me, and we just appreciate you so very much, with that in the boat giveaway. It was a great giveaway. A guy, Roger Colbert, was the winner this year, and we want to congratulate him. And he has already picked up his 2023 Nitro Z18, and hopefully Roger will get out on the water soon. Got a big show for you today. Going to tell you about some upcoming ministry things with Wellspoken Ministries, and then later in the podcast, we're going to go through the lakes that the Elite Series are going to fish, and I'm just going to comment on what I think about the season and what's going on. Like anybody cares about what the Bass Chaplain thinks about, what's happening in the season, but I thought it'd be a good start of the year to try to look at the lakes and tell you a little bit about things that we're going to do. Now, one thing that I'm very, very excited about that we're going to do, and I invite all of my listeners to be a part of this, is that I'm going to be doing some teaching times on Zoom. And so what will happen is we'll do them in 4-week segments. It'll be a cycle. We'll go 4 weeks, and we'll take a couple of weeks off, and then we'll go 4 weeks. Well, on the first teaching time that I'm going to do, I'm going to be talking about a message that I wrote in 1987, I believe, 1987 or 88. I can't remember when it was exactly, but it was a message that I believe God laid upon my heart. And it is a very simple message, but it's a transformational message. I give you 3 things. We talk about the 3 things that will transform the life of every single Christian man. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start over on January the 16th. It's Tuesday night at 7 p.m. And you can log into the Zoom feed. And I'm going to be teaching on the 3 things. And each week we'll take one of the 3 things, and we'll go through them in depth and talk about what the Bible says about what men need to do, what every Christian really needs to do in order to live a successful, spirit-filled Christian life. If you'll do the 3 things that I teach you about, it will absolutely change your being. It really will. And we're going to do those on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., January 16th through February the 6th. And then we'll take a break, and we'll let you know when the next teaching series. Every man is invited to log on. You're going to have to send your email to be able to get the email link, but we'll be putting some posts up about that. And we would love for you to join me, where I'm just going to teach. It's going to be some discipleship making time, and it's going to be a great time. I'm really looking forward to it. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to write this teaching series into a book eventually. And we just feel like it's a message that God has given us, and that we need to share it with men. And the reason that we talk to men a lot A lot of times women say, why in the world do you just always talk about men? Do you not care about women? I do care about women. And I've said this before, but statistics tell us that if you reach a woman for Christ, there's a 17% chance that woman's entire family will start coming to your church. If you reach a child for Christ, there's a 4% chance that that child's entire family will start coming to your church. But if you reach a man for Christ, there's a 94% chance that that man's entire family is going to start coming to your church. Women have carried the church for the last 50 years, and it's time for men to step up to the plate, to start doing the things that God has called men to do. And we live in a country today that desperately needs men who authentically have a relationship with Christ and live that relationship on a day-to-day basis. We desperately need that in this country. And so we're going to be teaching on that. Invite you to be a part of that. Invite you to, if you got other men in your church that want to log on and be a part of it, we would be delighted. Anybody is welcome to come in and log on to our Zoom feed. And I'll be teaching every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Now, last year at the end of the Bassmaster Elite season, I had a couple of anglers approach me. One is from Payson, Arizona, Clifford Perch, and one is from North Carolina, Brandon Card. And they said, Chris, listen, we have done sporadically what we call a meet the pros type of event, where we have pros come in to churches and they share a lot of their fishing knowledge and they give tips and talk about techniques. But then they share the gospel. They share either their own personal story about how they were saved or what God is doing in their life. And they said, Chris, we want to do that at every single Bassmaster Elite Series event. Well, that really fired me up. It jacked me up. And so we're going to attempt to do that at every single Elite Series event. And we'll be doing those on the Sunday night before the tournament starts. Tournaments usually start on that Thursday. We'll be doing it probably on the first practice day or the day before the first practice day. But we've lined up churches all over the place. There are a few churches that we haven't gotten places at. I don't think we've got one at, over at the St. Lawrence River yet, and we may not have one up at Lake Chaplain yet, but I think we've got most of those Meet the Pros events lined up, and it's just going to be a great time. It's a great time for you to be able to see a sport that I believe, a professional sport that embodies the Christian man more than any other sport. I think we've got a high percentage of anglers that profess faith in Christ, that walk with Jesus and want to share their faith. And that's exciting. And what happens is it gives you an opportunity to invite friends to come to these events. Maybe you've got a friend that hunts and fishes and they follow the Bassmaster Elite Series, or they follow Major League Fishing, or whatever tour they follow. And they love those guys. And normally they wouldn't go to a church service, and normally they wouldn't go to your Bible study or whatever, but you can bring them to this event because they're going to learn not only, the Christian life, they're going to learn about fishing, and they're going to get a chance to get up close and personal with the pros of the Bassmaster Elite Series that are Christians. And we invite you to, if you're in your area, that you come and bring some people. Great outreach deal, great time to just shake hands and talk a little bit with some of the greatest anglers on the planet. And so we're very excited about doing that. In addition to the Bassmaster Elite Series, I'm also a full-time Christian speaker. And so we are booking events for me to speak at. We've booked them literally all over the country. I'm going already to, Texas, Wisconsin, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, really Iowa, all over the country, Florida. We'll go anywhere that a church wants us to go. And so if you're interested in getting me to come and speak at your church, I'll do wild game banquets, sportsman's banquets, revivals, also just fill in on Sunday mornings. And so my messages are expositional messages, which really means that you start with a passage and you just go through that passage, and we let the word of God speak to our hearts. And I would be delighted to be a part of your church anytime. You can reach us at chriswells.org, or if you forget that, you can type in the Bass Chaplain, and I'll be the first one that comes up, and my number's on there, and I answer my own phone, and I'd be delighted to come to your church. So let's get down into it right now. We're going to talk about the upcoming 2024 Bassmaster Elite Series tournaments that are going to be happening. Now, I've had several anglers reach out to me and talk to me about the schedule. And let me preface this by saying is that none of the Elite Series anglers can get any kind of information about the lakes. And certainly they wouldn't call me to get any information about lakes because there's a reason I'm the chaplain and not on the Bassmaster Elite Series. But, some anglers reached out to me and, talked about the schedule and, how they think it sets up and things like that. Um, and what one of the big insights that I've garnered from a lot of different anglers is that this year is going to be a pretty different type of year. Now, normally what happens is the Elite Series usually starts down in Florida, and that's simply because Florida bass turn on and go into their spawning mode a lot earlier than anywhere else in the country because they're so far south. And so usually when you have a January or February tournament in Florida, it's going to be a spawning tournament. It's going to be a tournament where spawning plays a big part. So the sight fishermen really, really shine in those type of situations. Well, this year, we're not going to Florida first. We're headed down on the Louisiana-Texas border to a famed fishery, 188,000 acre impoundment called Toledo Bend Reservoir. Now, if you've been in bass fishing more than 2 minutes, you've heard of Toledo Bend. It is a storied fishery, a fishery where guys like Rick Clunn and Larry Nixon used to guide on those lakes, on that lake. And it's an amazing lake. I've actually fished on Toledo Bend. I got to fish on Toledo Bend last year. I'll tell you this, the lake is loaded with grass. There's so many grass flats and so many areas that are just loaded up with fish. We caught tons and tons of fish. I fished a Fishers of Men tournament down there last year and caught a lot of bass. And I think it's going to be a classic pre-spawn tournament, where the fish are just moving up, kind of staging to get into to go back into the pockets. And I think you're going to see a lot of fish grouped up and you're going to see some really, really big fish catches. And you've got a chance to see the century mark broken, catch 100 pounds in 4 days at Toledo Bend. Very excited to go there. The people of that area are absolutely outstanding people. It's a great place to visit, great lake to be a part of. Very excited about Toledo Bend. And at Toledo Bend, we will be doing a Meet the Pros over there. And it's going to be a great time of ministry as well as a great time of fishing. So looking forward to kicking off the year at Toledo Bend. Going to be a little different, not going to be a sight fishing tournament probably. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then after Toledo Bend, we mosey on over to the famed fishery in America, Lake Fork. Now, if you've never heard of Toledo Bend, you certainly have heard of Lake Fork. Lake Fork is an absolute storied fishery. When Texas created that lake, they basically built a lot of stock ponds and they started the bass growing in those ponds and then they flooded over the pond. So that lake got a big head start. There are a lot of regulations about what size fish you can keep at Lake Fork. And so it is managed for a trophy fishery. Lake Fork is an amazing place because, in my opinion, I think that every chamber of commerce in the country should market their lakes like Lake Fork does. Like, for instance, when I go down to Santee Cooper, where I was born, you don't see as many mom and pop tackle stores, grills, motels as you do at Lake Fork. At Lake Fork, every corner has a tackle store on it. I mean, you have stores that are like swim bait stores. They just sell swim baits. You have all kind of top of the line tackle stores all over, mom and pop motels everywhere, Airbnbs. It is a storied destination fishery. And that's because the Texas, Recreation and Wildlife Department has really, really done a great job managing their lake. A number of years ago, when I was in seminary back in the 90s, they had started the Share Lunker program. That's where if you caught a 10-pound fish, you donate it to their DNR, and they would take that fish and spawn it out several times to be able to get the genetics of a 10-pound bass in that lake. And then they would give you a replica of the bass that you caught. And then that 10-pound bass was put back into the lake, and they go to great pains to take care of that. And now I think the Share Lunker program, it might be up to 13 pounds that you got to do that with now, because Lake Fork is a lake where if you want to catch the bass of a lifetime, those fish are there. Now, they're a lot more pressure probably than any other lake in the country. Lake Fork sustains pressure like no lake I've ever seen in my life, but it is a destination fishery. Possibility of a spawning tournament there. If you get an early warm up, those fish will move up, but probably is still going to be in that pre-spawn, type of mode. Well, in the third stop of the Bassmaster Elite Series, we head down to Florida finally to the Harris Chain, but we're going a little bit later. We're going in April. Now, in South Carolina, where I live, you get a lot of early season, spawning activity, but then you get a lot of schooling activity in April. You get everything in South Carolina. You get the spawners left over, and you get the schoolers, and you get everywhere in between. Probably not going to be the case in April in Florida. It's probably going to be very warm there, and you're probably looking at a post-spawn scenario down there where a lot of course, flipping always comes into play like that. And what's cool about the Harris Chain is there's several different natural lakes. If you've never been down there, I've fished it several times, and you have places where you can run just around the corner and catch them, or you can run for an hour and go to way around and fish different lakes. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Always a great fishery, always great people down in Florida. Then we head over to one of my favorite places in the country, and that's the St. Johns River. I fell in love with Palatka, Florida a number of years ago. Love that town, love the people of that town. Just a classic Southern Florida town. Old time Florida lives in Palatka, Florida, and the St. Johns River is always an amazing fishery. It's changed a little bit in the last few years because of the grass situation. Different kind of grass there now than it used to be, but it's always a great fishery. Always a place where you have the potential, to see a lot of bass caught. And it will certainly be, if you're thinking about visiting a tournament, Palatka, Florida, that's one of the best places you can, possibly go. Then we head over to my neck of the woods. We head over to Lake Murray, South Carolina. Now, for whatever reason, in my storied bass fishing career, I'll say that in jest, I've done the best on Lake Murray. I love Lake Murray. Lake Murray is a great fishery. It is absolutely loaded with fish. We're going to be heading in there in May, so it's going to be a schooling type of tournament. It's going to be a lot of schoolers, a lot of fish still blowing up, eating the herring, and it's kind of like a merry-go-round. You kind of go from one place to the other. Brush piles, cane piles will play a big part of it. Those a lot of times when those herring get through spawning, they'll go down into the cane piles, and those bass follow them right to the cane piles. So at Murray, wherever you find the bait, you find the fish. And last year, they were there a little earlier, and they just destroyed them. It was unbelievable, and it really kind of opened everybody's eyes up to Lake Murray. Now, Lake Murray has gone through several cycles of life where it was better sometimes than other. Back in the day, my personal opinion, South Carolina had the two best bass lakes in the country in Santee and Lake Murray. It was astounding how good they used to be. And those lakes are coming back. But it should be a great tournament. Should be a fun tournament to watch. I think you'll see a lot of topwater catches at Lake Murray. Then we're going to head over to Lake Wheeler over to Alabama, and that was the first lake that I ever was the chaplain at. That was my first Bassmaster tournament as the chaplain for the Elite Series. First day I got paired with the famed late great Aaron Martins, who I got to preach his memorial service, and I was very, very honored to be able to get to do that. But the first time I ever rode with the Bassmasters, I rode with Aaron Martins. One of the greatest days. I remember the first day I had bought a very cheap rain suit from Walmart. I was like, man, there's no need for a $400 rain suit. Well, Aaron took off that day, and my rain suit got a little rip in it, and it kind of went, and all of a sudden it went, and it was gone. It was absolutely gone. It was like the Left Behind series. And I realized that day why people buy $400 rain suits. But I had a great day in the boat with Aaron. I was soaking wet all day. But I remember he went to a point at Lake Wheeler, and he made one cast on the point, And he said, they're not here. And this was before forward facing sonar. This was before you could see anything. And I was like, what in the world? You made one cast? How in the world? And he said, yeah. I said, why in the world would you leave after one cast? And he said, because that's the first cast I've ever made up here where I didn't catch one on the first cast. He backed off to a bridge that was close by the point, and he caught 17 bass in a row on 17 casts. It was an amazing day. Wheeler will probably be a ledge fishing tournament. There'll be a lot of people out there cranking ledges. And so it ought to be, for you deep water people, that'll be a good tournament to follow. Follow that one up with Smith Lake over in Alabama as well. It's a deep lake, spotted bass lake. There'll be some largemouth caught, but spotted bass play. I really love catching spotted bass. I fish Lake Kiowee in South Carolina a lot, and I'm very anxious to see, how the pros deal with just about a predominantly spotted bass lake. Ought to be a lot of fun. Ought to be a lot of fish caught, and that'll be a deep tournament as well. If we finally make the turn up north and we head up to the famed Lake Champlain, and I actually got to fish Lake Champlain some after the tournament last year, and it is phenomenal. I tell my friends all the time, I try to get them to go up north. We actually did that this year, but I have a lot of my friends that say, man, I'm not driving that far to go fishing, up there in New York. And I tell them this, you will catch more bass in 2 days in New York State than you will the entire summer in South Carolina. It is that good. It is a phenomenal fishery. The people of New York are fantastic. I will say this, I'm probably going to get in trouble saying this, but there are probably more conservative people in New York State than there are in my state of South Carolina. People they think New York, they think New York City, but New York State is a whole different animal, and it is a fantastic fishery at Lake Champlain, and they will catch the dog hound out of them there. It'll be a big smallmouth fishery, and one of the biggest smallmouth I've ever seen in my life was in Lake Champlain. I was being the marshal for Taku Ito, and Taku hung a fish right at the end of the day that I know it was the biggest smallmouth I've ever seen. I'm guessing it was somewhere in the 7 pound range. And for those of you that don't know, a 7 pound smallmouth is it's like Bigfoot, man. It's like you just don't see those everywhere. And it was amazing. That fish ended up getting off, but he went on to win the next tournament over where we're headed next, and that's the St. Lawrence River. And everybody has heard about the St. Lawrence River, but what a beautiful place. I don't think there's a more beautiful place. Thousands Island area is just phenomenal. You ride around and there are islands everywhere, and there are castles on the island, shacks on the island, different houses on the islands, right on the Canada border. And so, that fishery has become a storied fishery just since Bassmaster has been going there. Tons of smallmouth. And what's really unique about the St. Lawrence River is like those smallmouth there live their whole life on a treadmill. They are constantly swimming. They aren't going places where they're just going and sitting in still water. There's always current, and they're constantly moving. And that makes an already strong fish even stronger. And so the St. Lawrence River is where we'll end out the season. And so it ought to be a phenomenal uh, Bassmaster year. Of course, the Bassmaster Classics over in Grand Lake, over in Oklahoma. And that kind of closes out the previous year at 2023. And we'll be crowning a classic champion very soon. It's going to be an exciting year. Bassmaster is so much fun to follow. And in case you don't know this, the owner of Bassmaster, the Anderson Group, Chase Anderson, is just a committed, dear brother and follower of Christ, loves the Lord, supports us in every way in what we do on the Bassmaster Elite series, enables me to do ministry, enables me to get to the places I need to get on the docks and on the boats and everywhere. And he is always an encouragement, calls me up and prays with me all the time. We even get him to come in and speak at one tournament a year. And he is really an awesome man. If you've never gotten the chance to meet Chase Anderson, you need to meet him. Great organization in the Bassmaster Elite Series. and really, really honored and excited about the year that's coming up. I'm excited about the podcast year coming up. We got Joey and Nia next week, and you guys have got to listen. If you're somebody who has a friend that doesn't know Christ, you need to get him to listen to that podcast. If you have a friend that is in relationship with Christ but out of fellowship with Christ, Joey Nania has got a message for that man. You need to call, and you need to watch, and you need to tune them in. Maybe you call up your friend and say, hey, well, let's listen to this podcast next week together, or let's watch it on YouTube. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, it really helps us out. Just hit that subscription button down there, or and hit the little bell notification. That'll let you know about every little thing that we're going to put up here. We're actually going to put my teaching times up as well, and we're going to be doing some interviews and stuff, some little shorts. And so you don't want to miss that stuff. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification, and write a comment down in the comment. If you got a question about spiritual things, you got a question about the Bible, you got a question about your relationship with the Lord, or about fishing, at least if you get fishing information from me, you'll know what not to do. And so, but I would love to answer your questions, love to interact with you. I appreciate everybody that follows and subscribes and listens and watches the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. And this is the podcast where faith and fishing hook up. And we're glad you listened to us today. And we'll catch you next week. Don't forget, Joy and Nia coming up next week.